I am overwhelmed by emotion from today. I think everybody feels that. Just every talk, the conviction, the passion, the wisdom that every speaker brought, that the way I'm just up and down and pulled and meditation's going to come in handy this afternoon. When you think about someone who's a meditation teacher, traditionally, I ain't that guy. I'm a skeptic. I'm not into woo-woo. I love science. I'm evidence-based. Just quickly, my background of how I got here to helping to run this foundation is I grew up in a very political family in the 1950s and 1960s in the San Francisco Bay Area. And my family was so political at that time that I tell people that I knew I was a Democrat well before I knew I was Jewish. Now I'm an independent. But, and I worked for Bobby Kennedy as a high school senior. My interest was always in social transformation. How can we empower people to change the world? And I went to college, Berkeley, with the idea of going to Bolt Law School to become a lawyer so I could become a United States Senator. This was, 1968, like Bobby Kennedy. And I wanted to work for equal justice. And went to Berkeley, and there's, and I wasn't, it was either far left, far right, druggies, this. I wasn't anybody. I was just this guy who wanted to make a better, transition from school and make a better world. And it was so extreme and so intense. Well, first of all, I lost my fascination with politics because I thought, well, it's interesting, I'm never going to heal the wounds of the country through politics for me. Still a political junkie. I still, unfortunately, watch Morning Joe every morning. But so I shifted to education, and I thought I'll write educational curriculum. I'll empower kids from kindergarten to be able to be strong and make a change in their life and do something that the politicians might never do, which is really empower them to have a life. Along the way, a friend of mine who I trusted saw me, so I was pretty stressed, said, you should learn Transcendental Meditation. And I had two responses. Number one, it wasn't a word even in my vocabulary. And number two, I said, I got enough issues with my own religion. I don't need another one. That's just me. But the guy said, no, you could be 100% skeptical. This technique ain't any of that stuff. You can just learn it. You can take it home with you. And I learned it. And that was, as an 18-year-old, June 28th, 1969, 48 years ago. Dr. John Gray, who I knew as Johnny, has been meditating 50 years. So I learned it. Many people who learn to meditate, their first thought is, oh, this is going to make me enlightened. This is going to make me transform me. One of my first thoughts was, I want to teach this to kids, particularly inner city school kids. 3 years later, I had a chance to study with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and I think John was around one of those times. I became a teacher, immediately came back to San Quentin Prison and taught inmates in death row, taught kids in the schools in the Mission District, if you know San Francisco, and Hunters Point. Went on to teach TM at Apple Computer down in Palo Alto, and also General Motors in Fremont, and taught thousands of people, loved it. Always in the back of my mind was kids, at risk, people, just always. 12 years ago, the wonderful filmmaker David Lynch, anybody seen season 3 of Twin Peaks? Someone once described David Lynch as Jimmy Stewart from Mars. So anyway, we started this foundation to address the epidemic of trauma and toxic stress among at-risk, underserved, and actually under-resourced populations. And as my wonderful friend Rona and her wonderful husband Jeffrey, as Rona just said, 500,000 kids now in schools all over the United States, in the Middle East, in Latin America, in Africa, and now we're working with the Veterans Administration, and we're teaching in VA hospitals. There's a big study that's just coming out in August, funded by the VA, a $2.4 million grant, looking at the effects of transcendental meditation on reducing severity of trauma symptoms and depression on veterans with post-traumatic stress compared with something called prolonged exposure, which is one of these things where you watch the veteran sees the trauma over and over and over again and numbs them. And so this has been found to be actually more effective. And now in New York City, we're partnering with the city with the Family Justice Centers. And this is an amazing organization, part of the city there, that works with women and children who are survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. We've taught 500 women and their kids in the last 3 years. We just got a grant from the city to teach another 500. So things are changing fast. And I think it's very interesting that I am the last speaker talking about a meditation which could be called a technology of consciousness, is a technology of consciousness, accessing the latent resources of the human mind. This is not a philosophy. This is not a guided something. This is accessing a part of the brain. We are hardwired to actually access a field of silence that lies deep within every human being. That sounds pretty darn poetic, pretty darn like sketchy. How would we know we're experiencing a field of silence that lies deep within every human being? And the analogy I use is an ocean. You got waves on the surface of the ocean. You're on a little boat. You're in the middle of the ocean. You got these choppy waves. And you think, oh my God, the whole ocean is in upheaval. But if you could do a cross-section, you'd realize deep within the ocean, at the depth of the ocean, it's pretty darn calm. The nature of the ocean is turbulent on the surface and calm at its depth. And we use that as an analogy for the mind. Surface of the mind can be very turbulent. I like to call it the gotta mind. I gotta do this and I gotta do that and I gotta call him and I gotta call her and I gotta make a list and I gotta find the list and I gotta make a new list and I gotta slow down but I gotta get going and I gotta get to sleep but I gotta get up. Anybody? Not? So it's a natural human desire anywhere in the world. I'd like to have some inner calm, some inner ease, some inner creativity, some inner focus, something inner. I'd like to have a break from the chatter, from the noise. But the operative word there is inner. And the question is there such a thing as an inner? And if so, how do we get there? So when we talk about transcendental meditation, we hypothesize. Because fortunately, because I wouldn't be here otherwise, you don't got to believe in nothing in order, just like you don't have to believe in VR for it to work. You don't have to believe in eating a healthy diet for it to work. You don't have to believe in anything in this. We hypothesize that deep within every one of us is a state, level of the mind, scientists call it a state of restful alertness. And during transcendental meditation, we access that. It's not a technique of mindfulness, and I have been trained in mindfulness techniques, and probably many people here, and those can be very effective tools for coping mechanisms, for training the mind. This is not either or. Not manipulating the waves, but accessing that transcendence. And what does transcendence mean? According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, which I just looked up this morning for this talk, it means going beyond the limits, ordinary human limits. And we're always looking for transcendence, always. When we try and test our limits, when we run our 14th or 10 millionth marathon, we want to run faster, we want to climb higher, we want to do more, feel more, love more. We break. We want to break boundaries. We want to go, okay, I'm tired of that restaurant. Let's try this type of food. Let's go to a different vacation spot. Let's meet new people. Let's join a theater class. Let's do something extraordinary. We're looking for transcendence, something out new, right? The problem is when we look to change on the surface, one action for another, the extraordinary becomes ordinary. And real transcendence is not here. Real transcendence is accessing my own deep inner resources. How much time do I have? Because I'm going to be right on time. 10 minutes. What am I going to do? No. Huh? No, just a second. I do have a few more, and then we're going to do something. So, how do we know that's happening? How do we know we're accessing that quiet level of the mind, that deep level of the ocean? By the way, some people hear that, they go, transcendence, deep level, quiet. They go, and it's done 20 minutes. They say, how do you know when your 20 minutes are up? I say, look at your watch. This is not going someplace. We're just going from, we know what it's like when our kid is like a hothead, boiling over with rage. We also know, we say, oh, she's cool, calm, and collected. Cooler minds will prevail. We already know that. So how do we know in TM we're accessing those cooler, calmer levels of the mind? The body. Science. And the reason why we're in programs in all these schools all over the world, and we are working in companies and professional athletic teams. Last year we taught half the NBA referees. They really could use it. Is because of the science, the outcomes, the data. And what happens is as your excited thinking mind, and you receive something called a mantra. It's a word or a sound that has no meaning. And it's not used like, you're taught in individual instruction. This is not a mass meditation. This is not something you just get online. You have your own mentor, your own teacher, and you're given a sound and you're taught how to use it properly as a vehicle to access that calm, that silence that lies within. When that happens, as measured by oxygen consumption, your body gains a state of rest in many regards deeper than the deepest part of deep sleep. We've all heard about cortisol levels. Cortisol levels drop 30 to 40% during TM. Even more important, the prefrontal cortex, which is the executive functioning, the higher brain, judgment, planning, decision making. Stress takes this part of your brain offline. And during TM, during this meditation, you can see on the EEG machine and also brain scans connections between the frontal lobe and the back of the brain, neural pathways, connections between the left and right hemispheres, even connections within the frontal lobes. There's also an increase in blood flow to the prefrontal cortex and a decrease in blood flow. By the way, I'm going to be talking a lot more about this tomorrow at 12 o'clock at the Aspen Chapel. I'm going to talk much more on, you're all invited to come. But I think since it's brain, this is so interesting, this simple, innocent, ancient 5,000-year-old meditation that I teach a 10-year-old kid with ADD who can't close his or her eyes for 30 seconds and can sit for 10 years, when you're 10 years old, you meditate for 10 minutes, and sits for 10 minutes, and you can see on the EEG machines these changes take place. So there's an increase in blood flow to the frontal lobes, there's a decrease in blood flow to the brain stem, which is the arousal part, which means we're deeply rested and alert. You ever heard of the default mode network? That's a subconscious creative center of the brain, and when we're stressed and tense and really focused and working hard, there's the default mode network, means our ability to be creative. There's a decrease in activity. And when you get away, to talk about these brain breaks, you get away and you get away from the computer, your brain rests, and so there's an increase in this isn't that interesting, default. Not this late, Bob. This is a long day. And let me get really into it. No. So suffice to say, a whole constellation of very profound changes. And that's my phone telling me. See, I organize events like this, and so I am going to end in less than. We are going to do a Ayurvedic pulse meditation thing. But I just wanted to say that if you are, how many people here eat well? How many people eat well on a regular basis? How many people exercise? How many of you exercise well on a regular basis? How many of you have tried meditation? How many of you meditate on a regular basis? Yeah, so I am here to say this is a missing essential link. So much of what we do for wellness is from here down. And meditation, properly understood and practiced. And tomorrow I do want to talk about the different types of meditation, focused attention and open monitoring and transcending and the research on all of that. But meditation, properly understood and practiced, number one, should be easy. Number two, should be effortless. Number three, should be satisfying. And most important, it should inform and be infused into your life. It should have a significant transformative effect in your life. Because what we've heard today, so much of what we've heard today, choices. Do we make the choice when we see that kid on the bus sobbing with snot going down his nose? Do we say, kid, are you okay? Or am I just wrapped up in myself? And do we choose the right foods? And do we choose to breathe properly? And do we choose all these different things? And even if we have an exoskeleton, are we happy inside? So this is the focus. Access that deep, transcendental level of your own inner nature, few minutes twice a day, and do other meditations as well. There's not just one exercise that we do, there's many. So there are many approaches. I really appreciate being invited to speak here again tomorrow at 12 at the Aspen Chapel. And we're going to do something now. It's a little, okay, we're going to do something now. It's called, anybody here know Ayurveda? Okay, so Ayurveda has this one, this really isn't, like this isn't TM and it's not, but I love this thing. And we actually teach this to little kids in schools before they get to learn to meditate. So you take your left hand, sorry, my back to you. Your right arm like that, and you put your 3 fingers on your pulse. Got that? Okay. These 3 fingers of your left hand on your pulse. No, not like this, like that. And so you can feel your pulse. Now, if you're really good Vaidya, you can diagnose diseases from the pulse. But we're not doing that right now. What we're going to do is the blood, this blood that's pulsing through your body, circulating through your body, travels through your body over and over and over again. I want you to close your eyes. We're going to do this for like 2 minutes. And just be with the sensation of the pulse. You can open your eyes. That's nice. I hope to come here in the next month or so and teach a course on TM for people who are here if you're interested. You can go, it's a nonprofit organization, you can go to tm.org, find out about TM. You can go to davidlynchfoundation.org, and I think we're all going to applaud for all the wonderful people who put on this event, but I feel obligated for just a big. Thank you very much.